Respected Principal Sir, Professor Mushtaq Ahmed Loan, Sahab, Professor Manindra Sir, and Professor Ravi Ranjan and other faculty members of the college and their students, good morning to all of you and Assalamu alaikum. So as you know that, first of all, I would like to congratulate the Degree College Dar for organizing a one-day seminar on this theme, the stories of unsung heroes, the freedom struggle of India. It's a very wonderful topic and has been one of the theme of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And credit goes to the Degree College Tral for organizing this event, and I am also thankful that they have found me worth and have invited me as a keynote speaker for this event. Now, before I start the keynote address, I would like to tell you that why we need freedom fighters and revolutionaries for that matter. What actually happened in human civilizations. As a student of history, you know that I, as a student of history, when I study these things, I recollect that during the phase when Scythians were simply hunter-gatherers, they don't have any concept of property, or they were simply living for the day, wandering from one place to another place in search of food, in search of shelter. But you know that when the agricultural revolution took place, some 5,000, 6,000 years, because in history we don't have the exact dates, we can simply, for the sake of understanding, when the agricultural revolution took place, with the agricultural revolution, the concept of property also took place. Because you know that when the humans were at the stage of hunter-gatherers, they were not at the top of the food chain. When they started mastering over other animals, when they start keeping the pets, domesticating certain animals, and all of a sudden it came at the top of the food chain. And with the coming of agricultural revolution, the concept of property arises. When the concept of property was there, it was also the conflict emerged. When the conflict emerged, that means that society got fragmented into two groups, one who started exploiting the resources and another who started struggling for the capture of resources. So, you know that agricultural in every early societies used to be the backbone of economy, and the major invasions and wars were fought to capture the resources. You know that as we study the history, we find that the Aryans came to India in search of fresh pastures, and finally they settled in India. Or for that matter, early invaders like the Persians were the first people who invaded India. They were knowing that India is rich in agriculture. It was considered to be the golden sparrow. So in search of resources, they came to India. Then it was followed by the series of invasions. Why they selected India? Because I know that, you know that agriculture was in abundance because of its resources. And the invaders particularly came from the Central Asian regions. They were landlocked, barren, no scope for agriculture. In order to feed their countries, in order to feed their homeland, the only thing left with them was to search for the resources. And in this context, they were time and again invading India, be it the Persians who first came to India, followed by Alexander's invasion. Then the series of invasion, you find Parthians, Scythians, Kushans, Huns, then followed by the Turkish invasion of India, because they also were looking for the rich laurels, the rich resources of India, and particularly there might be reservations. Some might be thinking that because of when Islam emerged as a new religion to spread the message of Islam, that could be the motive of them. But in reality, if we study the history properly, it was the economy of India, resources of India, which tantalized those invaders come to invade India to capture the resources of India. Certain exceptions may be there, but I, as a student of history, when I study it, I found that it were the rich resources of India which tantalized those people, be it Turks, be it then later on you will find the Mongols. Now, when these people came, they were in search of resources. And then you know that after the Industrial Revolution, two major things have happened in human history. One, I said, was an agricultural revolution, which through which the concept of property emerged. And then the second was the Industrial Revolution, which took place in Europe in around 1750 and spread to the other parts of the world, other parts of Europe. And after the coming of Industrial Revolution, those Europeans were trying to find out the new colonies wherefrom they could get the raw material to feed their industries and to find out the markets where they could sell their goods. And they were in search of different colonies, and the different colonial powers went to the different parts of the world. Africa, even America was accidentally discovered. And for that matter, the different companies established their companies on the different coastal regions of the India. In terms of Britain, it was the East India Company. Then afterwards, they start slowly, steadily intervening into the political affairs of India, and finally, entire India became the colony of the Britain. Now, when India became the colony of Britain, there were certain, because there are thousands of revolutionaries who have fought for their motherland, maybe not for the idea of India. They were having the local concerns, local grievances, because we have the Santhal movement, we have this Pindari movement and other local regional movements. They might not be having the idea that we are actually fighting for the countries, because they were fighting for the local issues. But when the Britishers full-fledgedly established their power in India, with that, the good thing happened was the modern education was introduced in India. And it was because of this modern education and the certain lofty ideas given by certain reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai and others, a new sort of awakening. It was known as Indian Renaissance, because in Renaissance, which took place in Europe in early 14th century, later on in Indian context, we say that after coming of those reformers, a renaissance, a new awakening emerged among the Indians, particularly among the educated class, which is where they got an idea of nationalism, idea of protecting their culture, protecting their values, civilizational patterns. So these ideas got inculcated after the modern education spread to India. Now the speaker was telling us that history is very cruel. In fact, history, there's a subjectivity which is very natural in history, because ultimately we had to rely on the facts, and we have to rely on the writer, because we say that in order to study history, one should study the historian first. Because I, as a writer, may be inclined towards any particular religious ideology, towards any particular political ideology. So that will reflect when I write something. And my own personal likings and dislikings may impact the course of my writings. So this is something which is very natural. Now what happened, I as a student of history, when I have observed that the majority of the major revolutionaries or the major political leaders who got recognition in Indian freedom struggle, they were mainly very close to the corridors of power, be it because they had been very close to the Britishers, that's why they got recognition. Because the place for your recognition is very important in history. Because if somebody says something in Delhi, that will be heard. If somebody says something in Tral, that won't be heard so easily. Because the place and timing and your connections with the corridors of power is very important for your recognition. That's why I said if somebody says something in Delhi, may be recognized easily, may be heard easily, as compared to a person who speaks something in Tral. So those heroes, they got recognition because they have been put into the writing by different historians, by different travelers who traveled India and have written about them. But there have been thousands, even the principal sir named a few, who are the unsung heroes, but to my understanding, there has been the thousands and thousands of unsung heroes who lived in countryside, who hardly had been recognized by the regimes which were prevalent. And you know that the freedom struggle of India has been a very long struggle. It does not start somewhere around late 20th century. You know that the revolt of 1857 has been considered, many historians consider it as the first revolt for Indian freedom. Some call it Sipahi Mutiny, and there were thousands of revolutionaries who participated in that revolt of 1857. But ultimately, Britishers were successful in curbing that revolt, and then afterwards you will find the different phases of Indian freedom struggle in which different revolutionaries, political leaders participated in the freedom struggle of India, and ultimately India achieved freedom. So the aim of this workshop is to recognize, is to pay tribute to all those people who have not been recognized by history, but who had valiantly fought for the freedom struggle of India. No, you know, when I say the timing and place, that is very important, because in history we have witnessed these things. You know, for example, I'll tell you the example, Tendulkar is Tendulkar because he has played in Shivaji Park at Mumbai. Had he been playing it at Tral, there were marginal possibilities that he might have rose to that occasion which we have present. You know that the 1st May is celebrated across the world as a Labor Day. Why it is celebrated as a Labor Day? Because somewhere in 1886, there were the protests in Haymarket, Chicago, where they demanded certain concessions for the laborers. But you might be surprised to know that in 1865, the labor revolt, the labor agitation, or you can say the first trade union, happened to be in Srinagar when the Shalbaf workers protested in the lanes of Srinagar against the high taxation in 1865, and around 28 workers died. To my understanding, I as a student of history consider it as the first labor revolt on earth. But this has hardly been recognized. So we celebrate 1st May as a Labor Day because of that Chicago event, but hardly anybody recognizes what happened in the lanes of Srinagar when those Shalbafs, waivers were raising their voices against the heavy taxation. So the place and the connection of the person with the corridors of power is very important, because throughout the history you'll find that a person from an urban center, which is the vastly urban center, has a more recognition. And in Indian context, the caste has also played a very important role. If we analyze the religions, you will find majority of the avatars or prophets have been from the upper caste. It is true of the Hinduism, it is true of Islam and Christianity, because they have the recognition. The person from high caste, person from urban center, they have a say, they have the audience. That's why they are recognized. And for the freedom struggle of India, those who participated in far-flung areas, countrysides, they have not been recognized fully by history. And this is a time to pay tribute to all those revolutionaries who have fought for the freedom struggle of India. And I have been told that since we have already wasted a lot of time early in the morning because of the winters, so with these words, I thank you again, the GDC Tral, for inviting us for this event. Thank you very much.